Welcome to In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay, where we get candid about what it takes to negotiate effectively. You'll learn from the challenges and successes of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. We help you change the nature of your negotiations and get more from every deal you do.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of In the Ven Zone, where we help you, the small and mid-sized business, level up your negotiations. We do that by bringing you fascinating and great guests who talk about their stories, what has worked for them at the negotiation table, and the lessons that they've learned. And today I'm really excited to bring to you Roman Tirone. And Roman is an interesting guy. He is really a Renaissance man at this point. And I really enjoyed my previous conversation with him, and Roman has graciously agreed to re-record an episode that we'd recorded a couple months ago after having some tech issues. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of Roman's background. So Roman is a tech entrepreneur from New York. He began his career working in the entertainment industry at a talent agency in Los Angeles. But the pandemic forced him to change his career focus. So about 4 months into his unemployment journey, as he says it, I love that, he connected with somebody who he had known before, who he had done some work with, and created an app for that person. And even though he didn't have a tech background, he negotiated a contract to take on the development and design of a new app. And he was able to parlay that experience into 3 more development clients. And today he runs the Rumble Company, an app development firm that creates app for people with ideas. Welcome back, Roman. I am so glad to have you back. And I loved our conversation before. So thank you. Welcome.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. I always love speaking with you. So when you told me I should hop back on, it was a no-brainer. I'm excited to speak to you a little bit about negotiation, and I guess my journey into the realm of tech and how pivoting kind of helped my career. So excited to talk and kind of kick it off.
Awesome. So why don't you fill in the blanks a little bit for us? I read a little bit of your bio, but tell us tell us more about your journey.
Yeah, I would love to. So I grew up on Long Island in New York and moved out to sunny Los Angeles for college. I went to the University of Southern California, which was a great experience. And USC really it guided me to the bright lights of Hollywood. I was really excited to be a part of the entertainment scene. So when I graduated from USC, I had a job in the CAA mailroom, the Creative Artists Agency mailroom, where there was a lot of myths and kind of, lore about what it's like to work in a mailroom. And I could say all those things are true. It's a crazy place, a mishmash of like odd jobs and personalities. And I absolutely loved it. It really kind of taught me ways to socialize with people that were calculated, but not without conscience. You spoke to a lot of people and showed your true colors and hoped that they'd kind of champion you in your journey, no matter which way it took. So I ended up being promoted from the mailroom onto a desk, which is the typical trajectory for someone in the mailroom. And I worked in late night television for a high-powered agent that was super strict. And it kind of was one of those experiences where you don't want to redo it. You'd rather do a bunch of different things before you go back and relive that time. But it was so formative for me. And at the time, I'm not really sure how much I realized how much I would take that experience with me, especially as an entrepreneur now. I owe a lot to my old boss. And I think that I'm the professional I am today because of him, even though it was an absolutely crazy experience. But and I know that you speak a lot about kind of finding your passion and negotiation based on the feeling you have in your gut, your intuition about what's right. So for me, I kind of had a crossroads between what my future was in entertainment and what it could be if I did something else. And I wasn't really happy. I wasn't really taking care of myself. I was kind of spiraling. It wasn't good. I wasn't making much money, but that wasn't the main impetus for why I was unhappy. It was a combination of lack of enthusiasm and passion. So that was a red flag for me. And that kind of was the impetus for that internal negotiation that we talked about to kind of summoning the courage to make a pivot. For me, there were a lot of different factors in my head why I didn't want to make a pivot sooner. I wanted, even though I'm, 25, 26, at the time I was 25, wanted to make my parents proud still. I want my place in society, quote unquote, as a well-respected, somebody with a brand title job at a reputable company, to make my parents proud. And I think a lot of that kept me from listening to myself.
Mm-hmm.
So ended up making the change, summoning the courage to kind of say, F it. And I quit my job without having a job lined up, which is a terrible idea. I don't recommend that to anyone. Make sure, you strategically place it. I couldn't take it anymore personally. So I quit my job a year ago today.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's also the year anniversary. Yeah, it's the year anniversary that Tom Hanks was, COVID positive, and that the NBA kind of ushered people out of the arena. So it was in terms of timing, could not have been worse, because all the jobs that I had lined up were in lockdown, and they're like, hey, go to the supermarket and get toilet paper, man. We're not here. We're not hiring anybody. This is unprecedented territory. So, and that kind of brought about that entrepreneurship kind of push, but also that unemployment journey where I had a lot of time to myself. And aside from my time spent playing Xbox and passing the time during lockdown, not many applications were being received. I really got dialed into LinkedIn. I didn't have a LinkedIn before COVID. I dialed in, and it really helped me. I was kind of really, although I didn't find a job on LinkedIn right away, it connected me with a lot of people who were also unemployed, and I felt less isolated. Like many things in life, and a lot of entrepreneurs who got their start, I got very lucky. Somebody had reached out to me that I had worked with and said that they knew somebody that wanted to create an app, and they knew I had some app experience. I used to, kind of talk about the tech world to them. And they said, why don't you talk to this real estate developer? And I did, and he wanted to create a dating app. And I called up the people that I had created the app with, and in college, which was very unsuccessful. And I said, do you think you'd partner with me, and maybe we could pitch this guy and he'll let us do it? A large contract to do it ended up being around 4 times my salary at CAA. And it was, I only say that because of how momentous or how big of a decision it ended up being for me, and how much it really, it was a paradigm shift in my entire perspective of what is possible when you kind of just let go of the constraints that you have for yourself and you really just go for it. So after that, I registered an LLC. I started a company called The Rumble Company, where we design and develop apps for people with ideas. We have 4 different apps going, with 6 in kind of the wheelhouse. It's interesting, the parallels between the production world in Hollywood and the production world in technology. I've tried to kind of tie that as a web, and it's been exciting. I mean, I love it. Could it be replicated? I think I got very lucky, and now I'm reaping the benefits and trying to keep the ship afloat. But in terms of the importance of negotiation during the process, both kind of internally and then obviously the deals I'm making, the negotiations I'm having daily, integral part of all of this. So, I mean, it's been a heck of a ride, and I couldn't be more thankful and blessed, to be honest. I'm super excited. And even speaking to you, I'm like, I can't believe it's really real. So I appreciate, again, you having me on.
I'm really excited about it, because I mean, a lot of my guests we're a little longer in the tooth, so to speak, meaning we're older. And I just, when a lot of really successful entrepreneurs start when they're in their early 20s, but there aren't a lot of people like talking to people at this stage of your career saying, and bringing you to the forefront. And so I'm just excited that you're here, because I love this story. I love your story for a lot of reasons. Well, one, we met on LinkedIn. Right. So, which is very cool. I actually have a number of my guests who I reached out to cold on LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is just a very powerful tool. And I've been a member of LinkedIn, I think, since 2001. So yes,
Wow.
I've been on LinkedIn for a very long time. I don't remember how it might not be 2001, but I was an early person on LinkedIn.
An OG. You've been on there a while.
I've been on a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I love this story because, we often, when we're starting our careers, and even when we get older and we've been in a career for a long time, we kind of fall into careers by accident. And we talked about this when we talked the first time, and because I haven't really talked about it too much, but I was a career advisor at Harvard Business School for a number of years. And one of the gentlemen there who was kind of a professor and academic, but also worked in the career department, he actually said that we know what we love to do by the time we're 16. But we don't have a language to describe it. And the adults in our world don't have a language to describe it either. So what ends up happening is we kind of get pulled into a swell, a wave drives us a direction. The adults say, go this direction. Oh, you're good at math. Go do engineering, go be in science, go do STEM. And then now there's this whole thing around STEM, right? Or you're good in English, go do this. So we get pushed into these directions. And so we get into what I call kind of an accidental career that really it's not really what we want to be doing. It's this general thing. And then what happens to a lot of people is they get stuck in it, and they get stuck in it for a long, long time. And one of the things I like about your story is that you started down that road. Your family was in the entertainment industry, and you were going down that road, and you just went, and the pandemic you made the decision to leave beforehand, but it kind of forced your hand to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
And right. Because if the pandemic hadn't happened, you very well may have ended up back into an entertainment company.
All the interviews that I had lined up were entertainment jobs that ended up getting canceled because of the pandemic. So that's exactly right.
Exactly. So what I like about your story is that it wasn't just a pivot in the conventional way that people have been talking about it since the pandemic, but you made a hard turn. Yeah. And you just said, okay, and the words you used were what happens if I remove the constraints, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something in negotiation that I do talk about. And my dog is in here with me, and he is going to come up and sit on the lap here.
You just got 10 times better. I love it. That's awesome.
But one of the things that I talk about in negotiation is thinking about possibilities. And, somebody reached out to you and reminded you of a possibility, right? Mm-hmm. So we even get into a position where we think we know.
Exactly.
And then it's like somebody put something in front of us and we go, oh, damn, I hadn't thought about that. What about that? So tell us a little bit more. I'm really curious, because one of the things that's hard when you're starting out is how you build credibility with people who when you don't have as much experience, right? So, and we talked about this a little bit in the first recording, but talk a little bit about how you built credibility with that first client. I mean, to generate 4 times what your annual salary was in your previous job that's a big deal. So tell us a little bit about how you built that credibility with them.
Yeah, no, and to your point, that's something I struggle with as a young person, kind of doing business in the tech realm. Although tech, it's a younger kind of up and coming kind of industry. Yeah. But I needed to, especially without any past history, right? No proven track record. So what I did was, and I think a lot of people who begin their careers, whether you're in a college course, maybe you're like 7th grade class, or maybe up to what I am and the work you do, is if you have the proper software in place, you can make most things look professional. So if you take the time to put in the work and you're savvy enough, and sometimes you don't even need to be savvy, it's just understanding the tools that are available to you at your disposal, then you can make things that aren't necessarily, historically proven look like absolutely professional. So part of my ability to kind of convince and persuade people that I deserved a shot at the table and I was as good as anybody else was making sure that my proposals, my website, and any kind of documentation that's under my control for the Rumble company looks pristine and industry standard. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was using those tools at my disposal to kind of make sure that my external appearance was tantamount to the type of kind of service that they want to receive.
Right.
So that was number one. And number two is just understanding what the client is looking for, trying to take the person who you're dealing with, who's just another human being, and understand how they can be serviced, right? Are they looking for someone to baby them through the entire app process and kind of tell them what's best? Are they looking for a co-founder who's just being paid? And are they looking for kind of a sounding board for their new ideas, right? They could be all in one. But for me, that's the interesting part about coming from Hollywood and the agency industry, dealing with talent, eccentric talent at that. And kind of bringing that kind of everyday dialogue in Hollywood to tech. And I think that kind of has helped me build rapport, trust, and establish some of the relationships that you have. And without going too off topic, a lot of it is a referral based. When you do get that first or second endorsement of your work, your reputation, there's nothing more powerful than a referral. Even for me, depending on where I get my haircut or anything like that, I really source my network for a lot of my, tangible needs. So for me, that's been a kind of snowballing momentum builder for my business. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we talked about when we did the first recording was borrowing credibility. So we talked about the person who had reached out to you. I think it was a woman who reached out to you about the app and made that introduction. Tell us more about that first meeting that you had with that client and kind of how that unfolded and yeah.
Yeah, no, the meeting was awkward, like very awkward. Like clearly they understood what they wanted and I understood how to kind of get that for them, but everything in between it was very awkward because we were both on both sides so new to the arena. They had never kind of dove into tech. I've never obviously made an app aside from my college, but professionally for the Rumble company before. So a lot of the back and forth was about character reading. And that kind of created a tension in the air where I was like walking on eggshells and they were trying to kind of, want me to loosen up a little bit, which I hear, but it's tough with your first client. So the first meeting was very awkward, but we had, and obviously when you're diving into an app, it's like almost like buying a car in a lot of ways. You don't, spend your money the first time you go to the dealership. A lot of times it takes 2 or 3 meetings. So I had 3 or 4 meetings, with them and obviously as things began to open up, everybody was a little bit more comfortable, but in the beginning it was tough. It was tough. I definitely had room for improvement.
So, what were some of the things that you ended up talking about, or what were some of the things you did to kind of ease through that awkwardness and to move beyond it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the most important part is educating the client on exactly the services that you're providing. Because for me, talking about the type of work that I did came naturally, rather than trying to explain and rationalize the cost of certain things.
So when you were in that first meeting and it was really awkward, what were some of the things you did to move beyond that awkwardness, to build rapport?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because, when you have that gap, that silence, that kind of feeling of awkwardness, for me, it could go one of 2 ways. You can completely rise up and kind of try to tackle it too much, or you can kind of just embrace it and let it pass. For me, I tried to jump on it and basically speak about things in the deal that I was comfortable speaking with. So educating the client on the different services that we provide and how we do it and why it's important. I think that if you guide the conversation respectfully, and try to really show them that what you do is what they're looking for, and a partnership is really advantageous to both parties. Naturally, that will be uncovered if you are honest up front and kind of work towards that as what you want to communicate. And I think that for me, it was really discussing the app and how things that they saw could be realized in software that we code and design. So I just tried to stick to the script, but for me, I'm a little bit more comfortable if it's a little more loose, but staying on topic with kind of educating the client was key, because even talking about it right now, I'm like a little bit like nervous. It brings me back. I'm like, yeah, but after that, it was smooth sailing. They couldn't be a better partner, and I learned so much from them, even working with them every day. So I definitely am thankful that it worked out the way it did.
That's awesome. Now, I remember too that you work with developers that are not all in the United States.
Right. Our development team is actually domestic in the United States. Our design team is in Eastern Europe. So actually, it's a kind of strategic advantage that I pose to a lot of potential clients that, hey, our development team is American, because you'll find that a lot of development teams are outsourced to India, to different parts of the world for cheap. And then a lot of my clients will be like, well, we bought this prototype from, overseas, and it stinks and I have to redo it all. So that's part of my selling point. But yeah, I deal with international designers, which poses its own, set of negotiation kind of arts that I'm not. Yeah, it's a completely different world.
So what are some of the things that you're learning as you go through that process, working internationally with a different culture? Because I love international pieces. I've negotiated in 53 countries. So wow. I love the international aspect. I love it. It adds a really intriguing layer of complexity to any discussion. So what are some of the things that you're learning in that process?
I think that my first impression of doing business with specifically Eastern Europeans that are designers, or at least the people that I've been working with, I come in like very like bubbly, like so happy, like, hey guys, like excited to get to work. If you have any problems, like trying to create a forum for open communication that's like very based on positive reinforcement. And like, I can see you're smiling. You could tell like they do not dig that at all. Like they're very much so like, this is annoying at best. So I've learned to be direct with the objectives and the payment. That seems like a sterile approach, but through that, we've been able to like break the wall and kind of been real with each other and kind of been able to speak. It was me really learning their kind of cadence and rhythm rather than trying to force them into this like bubbly kind of state. So that was a big learning curve for me.
And I catch myself with this, and certainly when I do my introductions into the show, I am always excited about my guests, and I've started saying I noticed I can say in pretty much every episode, I'm so excited about this guest. And a friend of mine who's from the UK, but I think she's also Dutch. And she's like, yeah, it's just so annoying. You Americans, you're like, everything's amazing. Everything's so exciting. So we speak in superlatives. And she's like, what, you leave nothing, there's nothing left. And it is kind of annoying to other parts, to some other culture.
It totally is.
Did you ratchet it down a tad?
Yeah, it's like chill out.
What's amazing is having a child. What's amazing is not at work.
Yeah, there you go. That has been like the biggest kind of internationally, driven change for me is kind of toning it down. And it's helped me in other rooms because although we're dealing with so many different clients in America, I'm dealing with people in Chicago of different cultures. It's such a diverse quote unquote cliche melting pot that approaching everyone the same is definitely short-sighted. So I've tried to instead of be palatable to everyone, just be upfront with who I am, which is like I feel like comes with just maturing and growing up. I mean, for me, that's a huge thing, and being comfortable with yourself and really letting your, quote unquote life shine, or light shine. So, but yeah, there's nothing more enjoyable to me than meeting with people and attacking a common goal. I love the community of that. And that's part of the reason why I've just loved being an entrepreneur. It's such a community of people lifting each other up, even though you're doing separate things. You'd think it's isolating. I'm a sole proprietor in a business. I work from home in my New York City apartment, but there are so many diverse communities out there that are empowering young people to kind of, go counterculture with the corporate world and really start their own stuff. So I love it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think we'll see more of that. I want to comment on, so your comment about, you've got a client in Chicago and you're in New York, but you've worked in Los Angeles. I always say that culture changes by latitude and longitude. And so, I lived in Boston for a long time. I also worked in New York a lot. They're not the same. They're very, very different. They have different philosophies. They have a different way of being in the world. They're very different cultures. You throw in, New Orleans into that mix. Louisiana doesn't even use the same legal structure that the rest of the United States does. It uses Napoleonic law. So, understanding the latitude and longitude that you are negotiating in and that you're working to build relationships in is really important. And it's not about giving up who you are. It's about figuring out where it's most effective to adapt and when it's most effective to adapt to another person's style or another person's culture. And it's figuring out that effectiveness that's going to make you more successful over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You speaking to kind of your experience with 52 countries and where you are in your career and the work you've done at Harvard, I'm sure, the things you've learned even 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, kind of contribute to your perspective on how to best negotiate, right? Because you've learned so much, you understand the nuances of what you're seeing play a huge role in how you should kind of approach deal points with people from all over the globe. So I can only imagine how many different kind of deals you've had to approach.
So you've been an entrepreneur now for a year, and I know that there has to be some times when things didn't quite go as you had expected in your journey so far. Yeah. Tell us about some things that you've done that didn't work out the way that you wanted, and what are some of the things that you've walked away with as kind of lessons from those experiences?
Oh man, yeah, I definitely think that a couple of different experiences come to mind. But the first and foremost, I had a client, or a potential client, I should say, that I was a little bit too greedy. And what I mean by that is I was too focused on what I was getting from them rather than what I was providing for them as a service. I was looking at the bottom line. I wanted, I was counting my ducks before they hatched. I was planning what the money would mean to me. And I was really, transfixed on this price rather than kind of tailoring the pricing and the experience to the specific client. I kind of was rushing through it and was just like, I just signed the dotted line. Like, let me get the money. That honest to God is what I was feeling at the time. And that's kind of when I learned that is not a winning approach. And that's why they are not a client, because ultimately, reflecting on the proposal, I didn't really diagnose any of the symptoms of a business that they wanted to create. I really was just transfixed on taking and kind of instead of giving. So that's a big mistake on my part. It's even tough to talk about, but it happens, and that's part of the negotiation process.
Well, I talk a lot about how price in negotiations with so many people, when they start thinking about, like I talk about buying 2 cars for the price of one, plus $5,000. And, I'll ask people when I'm speaking, I'll say, well, when you go to buy a car, what are the things that you care about? And price. Lots of people throw price in.
Right.
But price, when you're really effective as a negotiator, in my opinion, is an outcome. of a negotiation. It's an output. It's not an input. And what I mean when I say that is that you've got to think about all of the assumptions that go into developing the price. And you've got to think about it from not just your perspective, but from your counterpart's perspective. There's what does it mean? What's the value that's being created by the thing that how is the thing that you're providing, the service that you're providing? How does the counterpart place value? How do they assign value? Because it's under kind of figuring out what the assumptions are for them, how they're going to define value, and finding the overlap in your assumptions. That's where you're going to get to agreement. So if you're focusing on price as you're going into a negotiation, and salespeople do this all the time, because they get compensated that way, right? They're compensated based on an output of price, and they don't care about all the things that go into developing it, nor do they care about the things that take away value in terms of adding cost to servicing a client or things like that. So I like that as a kind of a warning, I guess, to say, be careful when you're putting proposals forward and you're engaging with your, with a customer, that price isn't the thing that you're focused on, that it is what is the value that you're creating. Because once you agree that once you agree with your counterpart that you're going to add and create value, then price becomes an easy conversation.
Yeah. It's completely transparent, and it reminds me of a parallel kind of situation that may not be completely applicable, but there's a kind of a saying in the startup world for young startups looking to raise money, that if you go into a conversation looking for money, you get advice. If you go into a conversation looking for advice, you get money. And it kind of speaks to your ability to kind of translate what you're doing into how it fits with someone else, right? It's not all about what you can take from the other person. So it's definitely a learning curve, and I think that anybody could learn something from someone else. So when I put together those proposals now, my success rate is much higher when I'm specifically tailoring them to the client's needs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. So how do you discover your client's needs? What are some of the things that you do do you have a process that you follow to do that?
Yeah, no, there is a process. It's called the Rumble Company formula. I'm just kidding. It's a kind of a pour off the cuff joke. But beyond that, I usually try to be upfront about what they're looking for and their expectations. What is the best version of the idea you have in front of me? You want to create, something that revolutionizes a specific industry. Well, what does that look like? How are you wanting to kind of approach it? What's the budget you have? And if you don't have a complete budget, then what's kind of the end all be all? Are you looking to kind of start a business and quit your job, right? I get a lot of people who it starts as their side hustle. They're kind of creating something that's a hobby and that they're passionate about. I have other people that are willing to, really jump in, and they want to quit their job, and this is something that they see as a, $1 billion idea. So it's really diagnosing that level of commitment. And then beyond that, I personally am like a very personal kind of touch to a development contract. So I'm right there with the founders. I give my input, whether they like it or not. I mean, for the most part, we have like a congenial relationship where my input is welcomed. And I hope that it is. It's part of my job, and that's part of that I love to do. So for me, understanding the client's needs comes from a place of understanding who the client is and what they have kind of forecasted for the future of the project they're working on. Mm-hmm.
And I like that because how we ask questions. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is how we ask questions of our counterparts, and things around. So, and there's this whole thing around, Simon Sinek's book, Know Your Why, which I think is, I don't agree with it actually.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't agree with it. I think why is like, if I ask somebody why, so may I practice on you? May I make it? Okay. So
ready. Hold on. I'm nervous. Yeah, let's try it.
So why do you have a beard? Okay, now you don't need to answer it, but how did it make you feel?
It's like makeup for men, I feel like, a beard.
But you feel like but when somebody asks you why,
Right.
you're immediately taken to, I have to justify it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I felt.
I have to justify it. It comes across accusatory, a little aggressive. It's just not a very effective question. It puts people in a very defensive mode. So when someone says, know your why, for what purpose?
Yeah, it's almost like they're asking, what's your agenda with that?
And it's just a very accusatory thing. And so from a negotiation perspective, in many of the large company negotiations I do, and it doesn't really matter. Pretty much anyone says this in a negotiation. I quit asking why years ago because if I was in a deal and I'd get, a contract back and I'd say, well, why do you want to do this? Or why is this clause here? Or why can't we change this? Inevitably, the answer I got back was because this is how we do it.
Yeah, because this is
how we've always done it. That's so now I'm stuck in some history that I don't know anything about and I'm not part of that history. So I can't respond to it because. You can't do anything with because. So I quit asking why because it's an ineffective question. So I focus on asking what questions and how questions. What might we do now? What's possible? What are the possibilities? And how could we do that? How might that work? Right, and that leads to more effective problem solving. And it also essentially co-ops my counterpart to be part of the solution with me. So we problem solve together instead of my, bringing a solution all the time. It's as much about kind of developing a solution with my counterpart that when you use those kind of questions, when you kind of move beyond whys, it creates, it's almost like you're customizing everything without actually customizing anything. That makes any sense at all.
No, I completely understand what you mean. And I think that it's honestly a drawback for a lot of the industries in the United States today, because you can't ask why, because it's this kind of hierarchical setup where asking why is part of kind of a defiant outlook. A lot of people in meetings, they don't question the process. They have questions about, intra-process kind of workings, but the entire process itself, there is no real, and I think that's where a lot of innovation comes from. There's no real enthusiasm for people questioning the why it's behind things work. A lot of it, especially I'm sure, as a woman in business and by yourself, like a lot of your experience, and I can't speak to it, I don't know you personally, but I can imagine that in the history of things in the United States that, there's a lot of, I guess the right word would be kind of isolation for people that are outside of that club that knows why, right? You can't really ask why in the process of what really is going on. That is my kind of TED talk about that, because I really do feel like that is a problem with kind of the corporate kind of overstructure of America, and I guess, just internationally as well. But it's just something that really kind of came to mind when you mentioned, the ineffectiveness of asking why in a corporate setting.
Yeah, I hope people will start removing it from their language because, and replace it with something that's more effective, that moves conversation forward more. I have a mentor, Blair Dunkley. He's out of Edmonton, Canada. He's just getting ready to release a new book called The Ultimate Mind Hacking. And he talks about, one of the things he talks about in his programs is question concepts. And he gets really deep on how to ask effective questions. And it's really powerful stuff. it's given me a different language to use to talk about things that I've talked about for years, but he gives me a different language to use, which I really appreciate and value his insights and inputs. I'll get you a copy of his book when it's out.
I love it. Yeah.
So Roman, I am so grateful that you have come back and, that we've been able to reconnect and re-record this episode.
So excited.
Yeah. Tell everybody how they can find you, how they can find out more about the Rumble Company, and how they can reach out to you.
They can find me on LinkedIn, where my name is Roman Tirone, RomanTirone. My website, where you can kind of sign up for a free consultation, is www.therumblecompany.com, or feel free to reach out to me via email, rumbledevny@gmail.com. But preferably just go onto that website and sign up for a free consultation. You can find me there. But thank you so much for having me.
Well, we will put that all in the show notes for our listeners. So as we're wrapping up, because I'm trying to do some new things as a host and figuring all the hosting things out. Right. So tell us about a really good book, one of your favorite books that has really influenced you. And then since we're still in the pandemic, but hopefully things are starting to improve, more vaccinations, where are you going to go on vacation for your first vacation post-pandemic?
Well, for my book, I would have to say Shantaram. I've read it. For those who are interested in kind of a book that really immerses you in a different place. It takes place in Bombay and all over the world. It's a great book that really influenced me in my ability to kind of tackle situations that I'm unfamiliar with and kind of make the most and be resourceful. Although, I haven't killed anybody or kind of the book is just it's a crazy. So those who have read the book, don't, put that on me, but it's an incredible story. And it's really helped me throughout the pandemic kind of break down a lot of the leaps I've taken in my own life. So couldn't say better things about that book. And then for the place I'd like to go on vacation, I have to say Italy. I would just love to go to Italy. I just feel like that's a place where, after the pandemic, there'd be a lot of tranquility and peace for me. So hopefully I get to go there. I mean, maybe the next time we speak, I'll be in a villa in Tuscany, God willing, who knows?
There you go. I love it. I love it. Italy's amazing. I've been before. I love it. I want to go back. So, well, Roman, thank you so much for being a guest on In the Ven Zone. I really appreciate it. And like I've said a couple of times, I'm really grateful that you came back to re-record this episode. It's awesome. I love your story. I'm really excited to see where you go and where you take the Rumble Company and your business. So I will be watching. Absolutely. Love it. So thank you very much. And thank you. And thank you to all the listeners who've tuned in again today for this episode of In the Ven Zone. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode, where we bring you another amazing guest, helping you level up your negotiation. And remember, negotiation is nothing more than a conversation about a relationship, and you cannot win a relationship. Happy negotiating, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay. We invite you to visit our website at www.ven.zone to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Empower the negotiator in you and successfully level the playing field. Join us again next time here on In the Ven Zone.